Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is nothing. This is the Wednesday Roundtable for the Liberty First Foundation. We're doing our political commentary right now. You see me on the screen. You see Frank Johnson. Um, what you doing there, Frank? All right. Frank is not feeling well because he has food poisoning. Mike Marshall, who's also part of First Liberty First Foundation, is getting back from work. He has a crazy work schedule. Of course, we're on at 7 p.m. So that leaves me, and I may be joined by some of our associates. Dal Grimm may be showing up in a little bit. Could be Jan, or it could just be me. That's fine. Don't worry about it, folks. We will continue. The show must go on, and we will go on because there's only 6 days left before the next election. And that's going to be pretty important. I think it's going to be critical that people are able to hear what's going on in the next couple of days as we are. Well, there's probably about 10% of people, and I think polling does suggest there's about 10% of people who haven't made up their mind whether they're going to vote for Kamala Harris or it's going to be Donald Trump, might be Jill Stein or RFK Jr., Chase Oliver or Dr. Cornel West. There's about 10% of people who haven't made up their final mind. And here's the thing about that. This election, that 10% could actually decide the election. So it's absolutely important that we do share our conversations about what's going on in the world right now, what's going on with our government, and what overreach we can and cannot accept, and to talk about the candidates. And that's the whole point of the Liberty First Foundation. That's the point of our Wednesday roundtable, to talk with you about the issues that are affecting us all in this nation and trying to make sure we keep the Constitution alive, that we remind our government, the elected officials, that they are obligated to follow the First Amendment, to follow, well, not just the First Amendment, the Constitution, and they are obligated to represent the people, not the other way around. So, in doing all of that, and I know it's just me, usually we're introducing each other and we have a lot of different things. I'm going to try and catch what everyone is trying to talk about right now, what everybody on the program, what we were looking to address. There's a lot of issues that we wanted to go over. Obviously, there's Donald Trump just had a interview with Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience. Well over 37 million, the last time I checked, 37 million people had listened to that 3 hour conversation between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. And I thought it was very eye opening. Now, I am biased. I have an opinion. I'm voting for Donald Trump. I think he is the best candidate of all 5, 6 candidates that are potentially on a ticket in most of the nation. But that's my bias. You may disagree. You may agree. That's perfectly fine. But it was 3 hours of understanding a lot of the mindset of Donald Trump, why he's said some of the things he said, why he's pursuing some of the policies that he's pursuing. He's talked about RFK Jr. and the Maha movement. Now, I know a lot of people who follow Democrat or Republican politics may not have heard about this. There's an entire movement called Maha, Make America Healthy Again. And that is something that has gained a lot of attention. It's a third party issue because America isn't obligated to only be a two-party system. Ideas can come from anywhere. And thank you, user has been banned, has joined us as well. And we aren't obligated to just be Democrats and Republicans. I mean, there used to be Whigs. If we go back to the 1919 for the, actually it was 1920, the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. A lot of people aren't aware there were 2 third parties that were involved in voting for women to get the right to vote. Third parties have existed in America since the very beginning. So to see today, to hear how third-party ideas are getting integrated into this election is very interesting. And it reminds our elected officials that the public and the issues that the public want to focus on are the only issues that matter. Party politics isn't what is important to the American people, nor should be what's important to our government. But often we hear from major news media, from various partisan outlets, that they want it to be about their political ideology and not what's best for the nation. So I think in hearing the Joe Rogan experience, listening to Donald Trump for 3 hours, that was very enlightening on his focus and what he essentially believes MAGA is, making America great, and America first focus is, which is getting closer to and returning to many of the principles of the Constitution itself. Not to say that that's perfect or he's going to do it exclusively, but it is something that he is more focused on than we're hearing from, say, the Harris campaign. Now, as a counterpoint, Kamala Harris, in reaction, released a video that was, or an interview with Shannon Sharpe. It had been taped 5 days before Donald Trump was on with Joe Rogan. So it was earlier in the week, 5 days before Donald Trump went on with Joe Rogan. She taped an interview with Shannon Sharpe, a much smaller podcaster, a former NFL football player, an entertainer, someone who's not major media, nor is he usually interviewing elected officials, or not just elected officials, but also candidates, especially for the presidency. And there was a stark difference between the two. I would recommend to people to listen to both interviews. The Shannon Sharpe interview with Kamala Harris was just 1 hour long. Again, Donald Trump with Joe Rogan was 3 hours long. Less than about 1 million people have listened to the Shannon Sharpe interview, but I recommend people listen to both so that you can make up your mind on who you're going to vote for. And if you don't like either of them, there is, of course, RFK Jr., there's, again, Jill Stein, Chase Oliver, Dr. Cornel West. I'm not going to pick for you. Like I said, I've made my decision. It's Donald Trump. You can make your decision. Yes, and I can see, users been banned mentions, well, at least one of the candidates seems to have a focus. Well, that would be more so from the Trump campaign, where we've seen a very consistent conversation. So we know what his past record is, and we can see how his policies that he's offering for 2024 and beyond match up almost exactly with what he did when he was in office previously. So we would expect similar types of results, as opposed to Kamala Harris, who has said she's going to do something different, which is going to, and these are her words in speaking to Stephen Colbert, Shannon Sharpe, everyone who's asked her, what would she do different? She can't name anything different. She says she's going to follow the law and follow the policies, and she doesn't see anything to change from what Joe Biden has been doing. So we would expect, just like with Donald Trump, his policies refer to what he did last time. We know what that result was. We would expect that outcome. Well, the same thing here with Kamala Harris. We know if she's going to follow, she has nothing that she wants to do different than what Joe Biden has done. Well, then we would expect a continuation of the effects we have seen already. Many people have issue with that, especially when we're talking about the southern border. The fact that there's been an increase of 3,400% in the number of known and suspected terrorists that have entered America through the open border that Kamala Harris has been responsible for the last 3.5 years. That's a problem for me, but others maybe not. Some people think that there should be no borders. Now, out of the 142 nations in the world, I believe at this moment there are 142 nations that believe in borders. So I don't know why people believe there should be no borders. Every other country thinks there should be, but that's yet another thing as well. Now, I see some of my buddies from the range report. This is coming from Frank, who, again, he is suffering from food poisoning. He can't speak. Doesn't mean he can't type, and he is typing. And Frank says, she went on with Shannon Sharpe, spoke for 6 minutes, and didn't say anything that made sense. Well, I did cover the first, I did a review, and I couldn't make it through the entire interview. I thought it was just a retread. And I can say that in the first 6 minutes of the Shannon Sharpe interview, the very first question that Shannon Sharpe asked of Kamala Harris, it was exactly the same question that was asked by CNN in the first interview of Kamala Harris when she had Tim Walz with her, the very first interview. And it was one of the last questions asked by CNN. It was the exact same question, which is what happened when you got this phone call from Joe Biden? How did that work out? And instead of the 46-second answer that Kamala Harris gave CNN, she instead decided to talk about how she was confused. Her spirit and her mind were separated. And so she had to seek out a pastor to help her try and figure out how to deal with that until her team showed up and they started brainstorming the current ad campaign we have seen since. This is literally what she says. So she took her 46-second answer to CNN and she expanded on it for about 2.5 minutes with Shannon Sharpe, talking about spirituality, talking about how she was overwhelmed. And my thought is, if you're overwhelmed by getting a phone call from your boss saying you've been promoted, that you are now going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party, and you are overwhelmed to the extent that you need to, the very next phone call you need to make is to your pastor, that you have to try and get yourself centered spiritually as well as in terms of all other aspects of your life. What are you going to do when you have to deal with Hamas, which is captured and is torturing American citizens? What are you going to do about Putin and the Ukraine? What about China and its outwardly aggressive actions against Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines? If a phone call saying you got a promotion is overwhelming, what about the rest of the world? I find that very troubling. At least I do. Others may not feel the same way. And again, this is why I'm telling you, go out there and you can listen to the interview for yourself, make up your own mind. But that's one of the things we wanted to talk about. I know. What's that background noise? I don't know. Oh, hang on. Who's there?
That's me.
Oh, hey. How you doing, Jan?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay.
I can't show my face, so.
Oh, no problem. I didn't realize you were there. I'm looking at my camera and the screen for the show is on the other end. So what's going on? How you doing, Jen?
Good. I figured I'd go ahead and jump on because I saw with Frank still not feeling good. And Mike's still at work, and it seems like Doll's still at work. I just didn't want you to be here alone.
Oh, I'm used to doing a show all by myself, but never a problem. I'm glad you're here with me. So, did you see the Shannon Sharpe interview with Kamala Harris or the Trump interview with Joe Rogan?
I did not see the Shannon Sharpe one, but I watched the Joe Rogan one, and I really love when Trump does these one-on-one interviews because you see more of the man, not the character, not everything that they try to portray him as in the in the MSN media. He just sits up there and talks, and you, in my opinion, you really get to see who he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It did reveal a lot of his inner thoughts. Like I was mentioning earlier, he's thinking, he's He has a lot of deeper thoughts about the reasons of why he's picking this policy, why he's working with RFK Jr., with Maha, the Make America Healthy, how he's willing to let many of his subordinates like Tulsi Gabbard and Vivek Ramaswamy, let them do their thing that they're good at, as long as it doesn't interfere with some of his other policies that he has as his core. He said on Joe Rogan, yeah, RFK, he wants to try and make America healthy. Fantastic. Him and Tulsi can work on that. Just don't interrupt the energy policies that we have to expand oil and gas production, make America energy independent. As long as it doesn't interfere with that, go ahead, make America healthy, because both are necessary given the inflation, given the cost, the recession that we're seeing here in the United States, in my opinion, since August of 2022. So I thought that was pretty impressive. I did.
Yes, and then to hear that he had invited Kamala to come on the show, but there was a list of demands, and he just wouldn't meet her list of demands.
Yeah.
Why are you making lists of demands for somebody in the media, an independent journalist, to interview you, to sit down and have a discussion with you?
Well, I wouldn't call Joe Rogan a journalist. He's not. He has a podcast, and he does have politicians on from time to time, but he's not a journalist. But even so, and even more so, he's not beholden to any candidate. He doesn't have to have Kamala on. He was being nice. He offered her the same time, the same opportunity that he offered to Donald Trump, to have a conversation, to have a 3-hour conversation. He even made the concession. She got to pick the topics. They didn't want to talk about politics. He was more than willing to talk about anything she wanted to talk about, or not talk about whatever she didn't want to talk about. He just wanted the conversation like he does. His show is 3 hours long. He wanted to have that 3-hour show. And she said, no, it would only be an hour. And he had to come to her, as opposed to everyone who does the Joe Rogan show goes to him. Why is he going to bend the knee and change his world and change his entire program that has made him wealthy and famous? Why would he change that for her? I think that was really arrogant of Kamala Harris.
Well, and one of the things that I thought was interesting in that conversation that Trump had brought up was the fact that Joe Rogan was asking him about the first time in office, why he picked the people he picked. And Trump was totally honest about that and said, I've never been in politics before. Mm-hmm. So when it came to the transition, I had these people coming to me saying, oh, well, you should pick this person. And, oh, you should pick this person. He said, so I picked those people. He said, most of them were not good people. And Bolton was one of the people that he talked about. And then a really interesting thing that he stated after that was that normally you have to wait till the day after the election for the money to start coming in for you to pick your transition team. And he said, I'm not doing that. He said, we've already started getting private donations, and we're already picking our team. We're not waiting.
Yeah. And that has been reported that he's using private donations. Donald Trump is using private donations to begin. But the transition teams are normal. We've seen that in every election. Every presidential candidate, everyone who wins the presidency has a transition team. They all have plans and agendas. Right,
but my point is he learned that you can't trust what these people coming to you saying, put this person in. Trump is picking his people this time. He's not going to have the people that were on Obama's administration that he kept for his administration.
Well, he knows better now.
And that's what I'm saying. He, I was impressed with that.
I kind of thought it was obvious. I mean, he isn't a politician. He's never been in elected office. He was never directly involved in politics. He knew politicians, but he wasn't involved in national politics. So, of course, he was relying on everyone to recommend this person, that person to be in. Now he has an understanding of many of the players, many of the people involved, and who actually is reliable or reliable in the sense of not just the Constitution, but also his agenda going forward. So I thought that was kind of interesting. At the same time, what's going on right now, and I should point out that there has been an impact from both of these interviews, as well as everything else that we've been seeing. And right now, and I have it up on the screen here. Oh, why is that not larger? Why am I that large? Why is the screen like that? No. Why are we not sure? Hang on, folks. There we go. Okay. What you can see on the screen right now is that this is the 2024 National Multi-Candidate poll average. Now, this is from Real Clear Politics. It's an independent, neutral site, and they're looking at all the polls, all the major mainstream polls put together, and they come up with the average. So while, as you can see, the New York Times Siena poll has Trump up 1, but the CNN poll has it tied. Wall Street Journal has it Trump by 2. So they take the average of all of the most recent polls, and you can go back and see it all through history and see how this race has gone. But what we have seen is Trump has steadily been trending higher, slowly but steadily, continuously trending higher. Kamala peaked and now has been dropping down. And it looks like Trump's now leading, not just overall of all of the candidates, but also in almost all the battleground states. So I think that's kind of interesting as well.
Well, we know every time she opens her mouth, she loses people.
It seems to be the case that she's been losing people every time. The more that we have learned about her after the mainstream media push of saying she's great, she's black, meaning African American, she's a woman, this is why you should vote for her. And then once we got to the debate, we finally got to see, after 47 days, we saw her policies, and people said, well, explain how these policies will affect us. No one's been satisfied. And so I think that's part of it, because she's looking at, and we've been hearing from Kamala Harris, we've heard from Tim Walz, we've heard from John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, we've heard them all mention how they want to restrict the First Amendment. That doesn't sound like that's a good idea. That sounds like that's a big problem, and that's not going to help anyone.
Well, and it's the way they're promoting it that's really pissing me off. It's a privilege.
Well, they think, they have called it. We've seen Hillary Clinton and some of the others call it a privilege. We've seen that John Kerry at the World Economic Forum has said that the First Amendment is something that needs to be restricted. It has to be monitored, and it has to be okayed. It has to be approved. Any speech, free speech, is the problem for democracy. We've seen that even the same thing has been said by Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, that their unfiltered free speech seems to be something they have a problem with, because they don't like what people are saying. They don't like some of the answers. They keep talking about misinformation, disinformation. I mean, it was the Biden-Harris administration that tried to put through a disinformation governance board, which would be basically the Ministry of Truth out of the novel 1984, which would be there to check, to approve what is said online. And that's terrifying to me, because that violates the First Amendment. Without being able to speak freely, as we do now, well, then the only thing you get after that is authoritarianism. That's how I've always felt about it. What do you think, Jen?
Well, yeah. I mean, here is the party that tells you that we have no democracy in our country and we have to do everything in the name of democracy and tell you how important the Constitution is, but they are continually telling you how they're going to destroy the Constitution.
Well, they go ahead.
But yet they blame Trump for wanting to be a dictator, that Trump is going to bring the military out against the American people, that Trump is going to take your rights away from you, that Trump is going to do this, when it's everything that they are currently doing, and say that they're going to even more radicalize it if they get elected back into office.
What's that tapping sound?
Oh, that was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, I get what you're saying. And I mean, it's something that we've seen even most recently, 2 days ago, in the New York Post. Let me show you that image here. That screen share real quick.
Well, while you're bringing that up, because New York,
I got it.
It's like,
yeah, this is from the New York Post. Kamala Harris is claiming Trump is going to take away the First Amendment free speech and Second Amendment gun ownership. According to Kamala Harris, he wants to terminate the Constitution, but yet it's only Democrats, and this is again coming from her interview with Shannon Sharpe. Yet the only person who's talking about taking away rights is Democrats. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, they're the ones who are talking about restricting the First Amendment. It's Kamala Harris who said that she would go into people's homes to check on if they safely and properly stored their guns, or take away certain guns if they're firearms, if they don't like the model of firearm that person has in their private home. Like we saw with Dexter Taylor last week, it's Democrats in New York that went into Dexter Taylor's home and arrested him for assembling property in his home that nobody otherwise would have known about. It's the Democrats that seem to be doing all of this, and yet they're blaming everyone else, but these are their actions. And I find it ridiculous.
Yeah. Read private chat real quick.
Yeah. I know. Sorry, folks, some internal stuff going on in the back room conversations. But so I wanted to touch on that. I know this is going to be a very, very short show, so we're going through things a little quickly because everybody isn't prepared. Life happens. That's why. But so I wanted to address that, and we know that they are attacking the First Amendment, and that's why I wanted to show people the actual news reports that are out there. They don't seem to match what's actually happening. 6 days away from the election, it is insane. Did you notice? Now, Virginia, as an example of what's so important and what's on the map right now, the issues that we're facing. It's not just the First Amendment. It's not just the Second Amendment. It's not just that we're hearing Kamala Harris blame Donald Trump, orange man, bad, all the woes of the world are on him, regardless of the actions that the Biden-Harris administration have taken. But we're also hearing about election issues. I mean, Virginia has been fighting back and forth with the Biden-Harris administration to remove illegal voters, individuals, illegal aliens, and others who are not supposed to be on the voter rolls as per 6 years ago. This is a requirement from the DOJ, Department of Justice, from 6 years ago, signed into law and effect by Tim Kaine, the Democrat. And Virginia's trying to comply with that law, and Democrats are fighting them on trying to keep a couple thousand known illegal aliens or known illegal voters on the voting rolls. And I don't understand that at all. Now, according to today, the Virginia Supreme Court has decided that no, they're supposed to follow the DOJ. They're supposed to follow the rules. They have to take these voters who are not supposed to be able to vote or nor on the voting rolls, take them off. But Democrats are livid about this. Did you hear about that?
Yeah. In fact, that I had that on the list of things to talk about if we went to the list, and because I had sent that to you guys before, it had showed that the appeals court had ruled in favor with the federal judge, and then I saw yesterday that the Supreme Court said no, and then and that's not the only thing we're hearing. I mean, we've got several states that are coming out talking about how people, when they actually vote, before they print their ballot, it has changed from Trump to Harris. We are hearing that there are mail drop-off boxes that are miraculously catching fire.
Yes.
We're hearing that they, in a few different states, they have actually caught illegals voting. And when it's said, something is said, the state has come down and said, well, you can't nullify the vote.
What you're talking about is Mesa County in Colorado, which identified that there have been, now in this case, so far, there have been 12 votes that have been caught that were illegally placed, that the voters whose name was used did not give their permission. At least 3 of those voters, those votes cannot, for some reason, they cannot be removed. They're going to count. So that's
which
something
is totally wrong.
I don't understand it. But they're saying that according to Colorado law, that those votes have to count and the others are going to be removed, and they're investigating whether or not this has happened on a wider basis. But, I've seen congressional races like in the New York 22nd that have come down to literally a dozen votes. I've seen lots of races that have come down to a dozen votes on the local and state level. No, it won't affect the federal election, but that doesn't mean it's not changing the results. And, you get 1 or 2 extra members of Congress in the House of Representatives in, and suddenly you have either Democrats controlling the House or Republicans. That means a supermajority. It changes what laws we may or may not see going forward. So it's kind of important.
My whole take on it is you constantly hear, well, it's not mass voter fraud. It's just a little bit of fraud. It's just, I'm sorry, but one person who votes that shouldn't be voting is fraud. And this needs to be taken more seriously. There should be zero fraud in our elections, period.
Well, there'll never be zero. I mean, there'll always be some irregularity. There'll always be some kind of problem. But there is a funny quote I heard because I do follow all the politicians, all the candidates. RFK made a wonderful statement. When you go to an ATM, you never get too much money. They never overpay you when you try and take money out. And yet we can't get a voting machine that can accurately tell us a vote in one night. And we can't get voter rolls that are accurate. Something's wrong. And that's because the government is inefficient. It's ineffective, especially the way that it's set up right now. And obviously we need to focus on that because we can definitely cut down significantly. 80% of the irregularities can be removed. It's a matter of, it's like Virginia. It's not that we don't know there's 1,600, at least 1,600 people who shouldn't be voting in Virginia. It's that Democrats are fighting to keep them on the voting rolls for no apparent reason. There's our problem. That's the problem we have in our government right now. We have people who are fighting for their partisan ideology, not for the Constitution. I think that's the big difference. You know what I mean, Jen?
Yeah, I get it. I still, I'm sorry, we need to get rid of these machines and go back to paper. I don't care about a damn Chad. Hanging Chad. I don't care about it. Our elections were so much safer when we had paper ballots.
Well, for a lot of the viewers out there, they may not be aware that, for a couple of centuries, the United States used paper ballots, and they're considered very secure, and they're actually very reliable, and they're easily counted. But in 2000, in the year in the 2000 election with Al Gore, the race was so close that they decided they had to go over and over again, counting and recounting the paper ballots. And there was a thing because, you punch a hole and the machine would punch a hole in your choice, and sometimes it wouldn't go all the way through. And so they called that a hanging Chad. And you would see lawyers debate back and forth about, well, it's mostly there, it's mostly not there. So that does count as a vote or it doesn't. But even with those minor issues, realistically, paper ballots were in one night. We knew who would be the president. But then they've expanded, and here's the thing: they keep expanding it. They keep extending the amount of time to vote, and they keep telling us, well, that will increase the number. People have access. Black people vote as much as white people vote, as much as Hispanics vote and register to vote. None of that is a problem. The problem is, do you want to vote for this person? It's apathy is the problem. It's not the opportunity. We have about as many people who vote election night as we do now over 40 days of voting. Same number of people, same people are voting. It's about who's the candidate, not can I get to the vote.
And I think something else that people need to look at when it comes to, well, it's going to take 2 weeks for us to count the votes. That only happens in certain states, if you notice. And then look on the flip side of that too. Polls don't close in each state till 8 o'clock at night. Well, at 8:15, California is already calling who won the race.
In a lot of states, that is the case. We've always had that. I mean, that's one of the things, you can't help it. America's big. We have 3 hours from end to end. So you're always going to get that. But the easy answer to that, and what used to be done, real simple. Don't reveal any of the results. Don't report any results from the East Coast until after California finishes its voting. It's that simple. We don't have to, and I don't understand this. It's because there's no patience. They want literally, you're seeing both sides say, no, I want that because it may influence the California vote. And since California, Washington, Oregon are more so very left leaning, Democrats want that because that'll, East Coast Democrats, the reporting from New York, New Jersey will reach California, and they hope that will motivate more Democrats to go out and vote because they're getting the results from New York and New Jersey. And they know, well, that's going to be bluer than blue because those are very blue states.
Yeah.
And that's why they do this.
I think the other thing that really upset me this week was how Hillary came back and was talking about how all the Nazis were meeting this weekend in Madison Square Garden. But the fact that Hillary did not come out and tell you how many Democratic conventions and gatherings have been held at Madison Square Garden, and how at one of those was when her husband won the nomination for president.
Right.
They don't want you to think about how many times they've held events there, but because there was a conservative meeting there, she had to go back and compare it to Hitler.
Right.
And they've been doing this for decades. I saw a thing where everybody since every GOP nomination, I think since Nixon or right before Nixon, the Democrats have called fascist and Hitler.
Well, we've been listening to it has been decades of attacks. It's very much it is attacking the right. And we've seen that culminate in the three attempted assassinations against Donald Trump. We've seen that it's divided the nation. And we see that, how many times have we heard from Biden saying, you have to get the jab, otherwise you're a problem. That if you don't obey about the mask, you're the problem. That if you're MAGA, you're the problem. And they go into extreme saying, well, they demonize. If you're not obeying, you're demonized, and they try to ostracize you. That's got nothing to do with protecting democracy. That is all about protecting a partisan point of view. And that's really a problem. By the way, I got to mention, Jan, we've only got like 5 minutes, and I got to run.
Okay. I think for me, I am just sick and tired of all the rhetoric, especially that's come out of the Democratic side over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to stand up there and tell me you're running for this position. I don't care what office it is. I don't want to hear you stand up there and say, well, I have a plan, but I'm going to spend my whole time sitting here telling you how bad the other person is. We need to get back to our politicians standing up there and telling us what their qualifications are and why they're best for the job.
I think that's one of the best ways to answer this. Today is the day before Halloween. We have 6 days until the election, and the majority of people have not voted yet. I know there's about 20% have put in mail-in ballots. By the way, in most states, even if you put in a mail-in ballot, and then you saw the Trump interview with Joe Rogan, or you saw Shannon Sharpe's interview with Kamala Harris, and you now have a different point of view, you can go in most states. You can show up in person and vote, and that will override any mail-in vote you did. Not every state has that. Not everyone can do that, but that is an option. But we definitely here on the Liberty First Foundation, no Soundbites Allowed. I can speak for both and say your vote matters. Do not believe that your vote doesn't count. And look at all these issues, and they're all about whether or not you voted. I can tell you, as someone who has worked with many campaigns at the congressional level, state, local level, I've advised many people, I've run myself. I can tell you this: if you don't vote, you don't matter. That is a fact. Whatever your opinion is, you can have the best answer in the universe. You may want people to get $100 an hour as a minimum wage. Maybe you want to close the border and let 0 people in. Whatever it is, that's your idea. It doesn't matter what it is. You're for or against abortion. I don't care. Anything. If you don't vote, it doesn't matter. Even if you think you are correct, even if you are 1,000% correct, if you don't vote, you don't matter. You have no voice. Now, mind you, voting doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want, because the world isn't like that. We still have to get a number of votes. You still have to have the majority. You still have to win. But you know what? When you look at all these politicians, when they go through, and they will go through with a fine-tooth comb over all of the votes, and they're going to count up how many people were voting for Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, how many people voted third party, whichever third party. Are they voting for Jill Stein, or are they voting for RFK Jr.? They're going to look at all the people who voted for Trump and for Kamala Harris. They're going to count how old were they? How men, women, older, younger, black, white, Hispanic. They're going to count on all these things. And you know what they're going to say? Oh, these people we have to pay attention to. They're going to pay attention to those groups. But if you didn't vote, you're not going to be counted. They're not going to be paying attention to you and your issue. They won't. You have to go out and vote. You have to. If you want whatever it is you believe to be heard, you have to go out and vote. I can't say that enough. And when you do vote, it has to be for a reason. It should never be for a check mark. Oh, well, this candidate's male, that candidate's a female, this candidate's this color or that color. They have these pronouns or something stupid like that. That's not a reason. Those are descriptions. Those aren't policies. Those aren't ideologies. That's not in the Constitution. It's not supporting anything. That means nothing. You can go and get, take off the glasses, put on the glasses, get a haircut, get a suntan. That doesn't make a difference. Those aren't reasons to vote for someone. That doesn't make a policy good or bad. It just is a distraction. Have a reason. Whatever it is for you, have a reason. I know you can hear in the background, there's my dog. He's freaking out. Normally, at this point in the discussion, I just jump off for about 15, 20 minutes, walk my dog and come back on. But since everybody else is not feeling well, we're ending everything up. I apologize for that.
Hey, I didn't want to go the whole show without stopping and saying hello. I've been in the background watching the whole night so far. I'm using what little bit of voice I have to say hello, drop-ins, give my regards to everybody. Thank you guys for watching. I apologize for myself not being here. I had a touch of food poisoning over the weekend, and as a result, was throwing up so much I burned my voice box out. So I'm in a lot of pain. This is killing me to talk now. But I hope you can hear me. I hope I love you guys. I miss you guys. And I'll be back. Hopefully, my voice will be back next week. Vance has got to get going with his dog. I didn't want to have him go without me saying, popping in and saying hello. Marshall's stuck on the top of some snowy mountain up near Vermont or some crap like that. I don't know what he's doing. But I just wanted to say until next week, we'll catch you later. Be safe, shoot straight. Vass is going to end the show out for me because I have two more words. FJB. So there you go. See you next week.
All right. So that was Frank Johnson with the Liberty First Foundation. Jan, let me ask you real quick. Do you have any final thoughts?
Vote with your heart. Understand that it said every election for the past 5 elections that this is our most important election, but I'm going to tell people right now this is our most important election, because if the Democrats get in, our country is over, because they will completely erase anybody that doesn't agree with them.
I understand that concern, and you know what? They've told us, again, when it comes to the First Amendment, Second Amendment, two of the most important ones, the foundations, they've told us they want to change them. They are going to change them if Kamala continues to be in power. They have promised that already. I take them at their word. But again, I tell people, you vote what you think is best. We've been giving you evidence. That's what this program's about. We've been talking about these issues for a long time now. And that's why you come every week, whether it was on Friday or whether it's on Wednesday, to find out more about these issues and to hear how they're affecting the Constitution, how the Constitution is weakening when we stop paying attention, when we just blindly obey. Don't do that. Go out there and vote. Have a reason for your vote. Find a reason for your vote, whether it's for third party, write in one of the two major candidates. Have a reason and then vote. And if you don't have a reason, you're not paying attention to politics. And that's going to hurt your life. If you don't have a reason besides, well, that one's got a suntan, one doesn't have a suntan, one's male, one's female. If that's your reason, then you have failed yourself, because it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. But that's enough for me. I won't preach. I am pointing it out. And I think Jan has a great point, and I understand. And Frank made a good example as well. That all being said, we will leave you this week with this thought. There is almost every nation in the world, actually every nation in the world, wants to be America. They want to be free. They want all the things that come with freedom and the Constitution. And that's why we have 8 million people who've entered into the United States illegally in the last 3.5 years. Guess what? We only get to have all of these things that the world wants to be part of, and the world wants, if we have a constitution, if we have people who vote. And if you don't vote, we won't have these things. That's just a fact. Folks, every Wednesday at 7 p.m., you can count on us being here. The show always goes on, whether it's longer or shorter. It's always here because we want to make sure you are informed. Please hit the like button and share, even with the short shows. It's always important to have your like, your share, and your subscription. Please add your support to our effort to continue to always talk to you about the things that matter, the things that affect you, the things that are affecting our Constitution, the thing that makes America the greatest nation in the world. Folks, I thank you very much. I'll see you very soon. We'll be back next week, 7 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.